And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Flying weather for Wednesday morning. IFR up here over the northwest interior areas, all the way east into the Koyukuk Valley. Marginal VFR off to the east there, some IFR central western Arctic coast. All the Chukchi Sea. IFR here just south of St. Lawrence Island, and then southward along a frontal system there to about Atka Island into the eastern Aleutians. VFR, southern Alaska, Prince William Sound, and all of the southeast coast. And for the afternoon, that holds. VFR actually expanding here over the interior areas to the north. And North Slope, Arctic coast looking pretty good. Kodiak Island, mostly VFR. Same thing for Bristol Bay. Some marginal VFR up along the southwest coast. And in along the northwest coast still into the Kobuk Valley. But the Koyukuk Valley becoming VFR. Band of IFR out here, St. Lawrence Island down across the Pribilofs. Eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, now edging eastward past Atka Island, improving to the west. And for Thursday morning, IFR here, again, the Bering Strait, a little farther eastward now, up in this area, but not too far to the east, extending on down almost to the Yukon Delta coast, across Nunivak Island, Pribilofs, down to the eastern Aleutians, marginal VFR either side of that, and marginal VFR now up across Kodiak Island into Kamishak Bay there, possibly to Port Moller and Soldovia, but north, good VFR for the morning hours Thursday all the way to the Arctic coast. In the Panhandle, no change VFR for the next couple of days everywhere there. Into the Gulf of Alaska, North Gulf Coast, looking really good Thursday afternoon. Again, possible marginal VFR, Kamishak, Kachemak Bay areas down across Kodiak Island, maybe into Bristol Bay here, but the main, the low stuff staying out over the Bering Sea, as well as eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, up through the Bering Strait, so catching the Seward Peninsula here, and along the southern slopes of the western Brooks Range. But for the most part, the North Slope and eastern Arctic coast into the interior, good VFR right through Thursday afternoon. And for passes, Anatuvik and Adigan, VFR for a change up that way tomorrow. Of course, I believe they're VFR today as well. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR, either approach, rainy, VFR, windy, VFR, Isabel, also wide open, VFR in either entrance, Mentasta, VFR, Tanita, VFR, and Portage, also VFR, Chilkoot and White, VFR. Freezing levels, 2,000 feet here, all the way up into the Chukchi Sea, and then sloping up to about 8,000 feet here across Bristol Bay, Southern Cook Inlet. 2 to 6,000 feet, that's correct, over the southeast coast. And for icing, none over the interior from the Arctic coast down across the Gulf into the Panhandle, all icing free tomorrow. And then the moisture out here over the eastern Bering Sea brings isolated moderate rime icing, Fox Islands, Alaska Peninsula, up across the Pribilofs, maybe to Nunivak Island. And that's about it as far as icing goes. So looking at 33,000 foot wind flow chart, good high pressure here just southeast of Kodiak Island. Flow coming up over the top of that, actually southeast flow here, 85 knots or so. And then that meeting up with this more westerly flow out here, and where the two combine, kind of puts a squeeze in the atmosphere. Southwest 110 knots right up toward St. Lawrence Island, or the Bering Strait across St. Lawrence Island. Coming down out of the northwest, 85 knots, eastern interior, on down along and off the southeast coast. 9,000 feet, good high pressure over interior Alaska, down all the way down into the Gulf here. Northerly flow still 35 knots in the Panhandle. South to north flow here, 55 to 60 knots, strongest along the Alaska Peninsula there, and then about 40 knots here for the Bering Strait, Seward Peninsula. Northwest 40, still clipping the eastern Arctic coast there. Light out over the Bering Sea, then at 3,000 feet. South to southeast winds, 50 knots for the Alaska Peninsula, diminishing to 35 knots along the Yukon Delta coast, as well as St. Lawrence Island area, and then back up to 40 over the Chukchi Sea. High pressure makes for light variable wind conditions over the central and eastern interior. Still northeast winds, about 30 knots here, blowing across the northern southeast coast. And with that, could be some light to isolated moderate turbulence there, especially for small aircraft, kind of a mechanical nature there to the turbulence. And for the Alaska Peninsula, moderate turbulence likely there into the eastern Aleutians, also around Cape Newenham, maybe Togiak.